What if the story you grew up hearing about Enoch, the mysterious figure who walked with God and was no more, was only a faint shadow of something much bigger, stranger, and more awe-inspiring? Have you ever wondered why the Bible hints at whole realms above and below our world, yet leaves their details shrouded in silence? Could there be truths, ancient and hidden, that reach back before the flood and forward to the very heart of God Himself? Now, imagine waking up in the dark, quiet before dawn, the world around you still and expectant, when suddenly two dazzling figures appear at your bedside. Their faces shine brighter than the midday sun. Their wings shimmer like molten gold. And when they speak your name, you feel every hair on your body stand on end, not from fear, but from the overwhelming sense that you are about to step into something destined before time itself. Before we dive into Enoch's forbidden journey, drop a 888 in the comments if you're ready to go beyond the surface, to uncover what lies beyond the stories you thought you knew. And if you haven't yet, tap subscribe, because this isn't just a Bible story. This is a secret invitation, an open door into the mysteries of heaven. Let's go back, not just before Moses, not just before Noah, but to a time when the earth was young, when legends walked the valleys, and the world's fate hung in a delicate balance between darkness and light. In those ancient days, there lived a man named Enoch, son of Jared. He wasn't a king or a warrior. He didn't build cities or conquer nations. But Enoch had something far rarer. He had the ear of God. It's written in the ancient books, some long lost. Some still whispered in quiet corners that Enoch was a righteous man, a seeker, and a scribe of the Most High. People called him an artificer, a craftsman, not just of tools, but of wisdom. He was the seventh generation from Adam, and while others around him chased after idols and violence, Enoch walked a different path, a path that would lead him to witness wonders no human eyes had ever seen. On his 365th year, a number echoing the days of the solar year, as if Enoch himself was meant to embody a cosmic cycle, he found himself alone, resting on his bed. Yet his spirit was troubled. A sense of great change stirred within him, something urgent and sorrowful that made him weep. Even as he slept, it was then that the boundary between heaven and earth began to blur. In the stillness, two mighty beings appeared at the foot of his bed. Their forms were unlike anything on earth, taller than any man, radiant, their garments glimmering with purple light, their eyes burning like living fire. Even the air around them seemed to hum with the energy of another world. From their lips, fire danced with every word, yet their voices sang with a kind of beauty that made Enoch tremble to his core. Enoch, they called, their tone both fierce and gentle. Do not fear. The eternal God has sent us to you. Today, you will ascend with us into heaven. But first, you must speak to your household. To your sons, tell them what is required. Tell them not to seek you, for you will not return until the Lord Himself wills it. Can you picture this moment? The room glowing with supernatural light. The weight of a command from the Creator Himself filling the silence. Enoch, startled but obedient, hurried to gather his sons Methuselah, Regime, God, and shared with them all that he had seen, all that he had been commanded. Listen to me, my children. Enoch said, his voice likely trembling as he looked at their familiar faces for what might be the last time. Turn not from God. Do not be drawn to the empty gods of this world, the idols that cannot speak, the powers that cannot save, for their end is destruction. But those who walk in awe of the Lord will find their hearts made strong. His words were not just a farewell, but a legacy advice, not just for his sons, but for all who would ever hear this story. In that ancient world, where the boundaries between the physical and spiritual felt thinner, Enoch's family must have sensed that something world-changing was about to happen. The air itself would have seemed charged, the very walls echoing with the memory of his blessing and warning. Then, as dawn broke, Enoch stepped out from his house and into the unknown. The two mighty angels, his silent guardians, lifted him on their wings, and in a rush of wind and wonder, Enoch left the earth behind. Below, his home faded into mist. Above, the sky grew strange and vast. His journey began with the first heaven, a realm suspended above the clouds, where Enoch beheld a sea greater than any earthly ocean, shimmering with an impossible, otherworldly light. There, the rulers of the stars gathered elders and angelic beings, each with duties as ancient as the cosmos. 200 angels, we're told, watched over the stars, their wings sweeping through the ether, ensuring the order of the universe. Among them, Enoch saw the storerooms of snow and the secret places where the dew is kept. Treasures guarded by angels, more radiant than polished silver. But this was only the beginning. The angels led Enoch upward, higher still, into the second heaven, a place not of light, but of terrible darkness. Here, suspended in a shadow deeper than any night on earth, Enoch saw prisoners, angelic beings, fallen from their stations, bound in sorrow and weeping as they awaited a judgment still to come. Their forms were dark, their cries ceaseless, a chilling reminder that even among the immortals, rebellion has a cost. Who are these? Enoch whispered. That they suffer, so. The answer came, echoing in the dark. These are those who turned from the command of God, who followed their own will, and now endure the weight of their choice. It's a sobering scene, isn't it? We sometimes forget that the Bible's stories aren't just about battles and miracles. They're about choices and the consequences that follow. Enoch's compassion for these prisoners was real, but he knew he could not save them. He was only a man, after all, swept up in a story older and greater than himself. But before Enoch could dwell on this sorrow, the angels urged him on. Upward they climbed, ascending through realms beyond mortal imagining. The third heaven unfolded before him, and here the entire mood shifted. Gone was the darkness. In its place, a garden bloomed with life and beauty beyond words. Picture it. Every tree bursting with blossoms, their fruit sweet and fragrant. The air was alive with music, the sound of angelic voices lifting in never-ending praise. In the heart of this paradise stood the tree of life, its roots reaching into the ends of the earth, its branches heavy with every kind of fruit, shining with gold and fire. This was the place where, legend says, the Lord himself would rest a garden between corruption and incorruptibility, watered by springs that flowed with honey, milk, oil, and wine. And among the trees, 300 angels watched over the garden, their songs unbroken, their joy unending. This, the angels told Enoch, was the eternal inheritance prepared for those who endure injustice, who turn from evil, who feed the hungry and clothe the naked, who lift up the fallen and care for orphans, those who walk without fault before the Lord. What must Enoch have felt? Seeing such beauty, relief, hope, maybe even longing for here was a glimpse of the world as it was meant to be, a promise that righteousness has its reward. But just as quickly, the vision changed. The angels took Enoch to the northern edge, where paradise faded into shadow. There, he saw a place of torment fire, frost, unrelenting thirst, and shivering cold. Chains and weapons gleamed in the dim light, and angels of judgment administered punishments too dreadful to describe. For this was the destiny of those who turn their backs on God, who practice violence, deception, envy, and all manner of injustice. Enoch's heart broke as he witnessed the fates of both the righteous and the rebellious. It's a stark contrast, one meant to stir not just fear, but a sober awareness that every choice, every act of kindness or cruelty, echoes far beyond this world. Just as Enoch was about to be overwhelmed, the angels touched his shoulder, steadying him, urging him onward, for his journey was only beginning. What he was about to see would not only transform his understanding, it would forever change the story of humanity. As Enoch steadied himself, breathless from the scenes of paradise and punishment, the two angels once again lifted him beyond all he had ever known. Their wings glinted with radiant light, shimmering as they soared higher, taking Enoch away from the sights of gardens and flames, deeper into the secrets of the cosmos. What thoughts ran through Enoch's mind in that moment? Was it fear, a hurry, or something altogether new? A humility that comes only when standing on the threshold between worlds. Above him, the sky melted into a brilliant tapestry of shifting colors. Light danced in patterns that no human artist could ever hope to capture. The air itself felt alive, pulsing with music that seemed to vibrate from the heart of creation. It was here, in the fourth heaven, that Enoch saw things so marvelous and strange that even now, words can barely contain their wonder. Imagine being shown the workings of the universe itself, the paths of the sun and the moon, each moving in their majestic cycles, neither rushing nor delaying, guided by laws more ancient than mountains. Enoch watched as the sun circled with a speed like the wind, surrounded by a host of great stars, each one with its own retinue of smaller stars, a vast assembly all marching according to an order set before the beginning of time. He learned, too, that these celestial bodies were not left to wander aimlessly. Angelic beings brighter than the sun, swifter than the eagles watched over them, guiding their courses, kindling their fires, ensuring that day always followed night and season always gave way to season. Enoch stood at the gates where the sun entered and exited, massive archways opening and closing to let in light and usher in darkness. Each gate measured with a precision that could only have come from the hand of the Creator himself. The angels explained that the sun's journey was more than just a simple path across the sky. It was attended by phoenixes and strange, wondrous creatures, some with the tails of lions, others with the heads of crocodiles. their wings iridescent, their voices joining the chorus of heaven each dawn. They sang to welcome the giver of light, filling the air with a song so beautiful that the very birds on earth fluttered in response. Sensing the presence of glory, Enoch marveled at the mathematics of it all, the dance of days and months, the secrets of the solar and lunar years. He saw how the moon followed its own cycle, entering and leaving through 12 mighty gates, each step measured, each phase purposeful. He learned the mysteries of time itself, why the solar year contained 365 and a quarter days, why the lunar year fell short, and how this subtle difference shaped the unfolding of history. But even as Enoch absorbed these wonders, he sensed the deeper message hidden beneath them. The universe was not random, nor cold, nor meaningless. Every star was placed by design, every cycle maintained by loving intention. If such care governed the heavens, how much more must the Creator care for the people made in His image? Yet, the journey was not over. The angels, ever patient, beckoned him onward. They soared upward into the fifth heaven. And here Enoch encountered a sight more somber than all before. Great soldiers, vast in stature, gathered in mournful silence. These were not ordinary angels, but the Gregorii the Watchers who had once been mighty among the heavenly hosts. Their faces were downcast, their mouths closed in perpetual sorrow. Enoch realized, with a shudder, that these were the angels who had rebelled, descending to earth in ancient days, led by a prince called Satanael. They had broken their vows and, seduced by the beauty of human daughters, brought forth chaos and confusion. From their union came giants beings of enmity and violence, whose corruption spread like a stain across the land. For this transgression, God had judged them. Now, their song was gone, their purpose lost, and they sat in darkness, weeping for a glory they could not regain. Enoch, overwhelmed by their sorrow, found his own heart aching. He remembered the prisoners in the second heaven and saw now the cost of pride, the ruin of those who turned away from the light. Still, Enoch was not left in this shadow for long. He spoke words of compassion to the Watchers, urging them to repentance, and in that moment, a miracle occurred. The silence broke. 4 trumpets sounded together, and the Watchers, hearing Enoch's plea, lifted their voices in a single, mighty song. Their music rose to the throne of God. Sorrow mingled with hope, a sound that shook the very foundations of heaven. Encouraged, Enoch continued his ascent, led gently by his angelic guides. The next realm, the sixth heaven, was a place of unspeakable radiance. Here, Enoch beheld 7 bands of angels, shining brighter than the purest gold, each indistinguishable in face and dress. There was no pride, no competition, only unity, harmony, and purpose. These were the ones who governed the cycles of stars and seasons, who recorded the deeds of men, who offered sweet songs of praise day and night. Enoch learned that nothing escaped their watchful eyes. Every deed, every word, every hidden thought was written in books that stood always open before the Lord. In the midst of these angels, a symphony resounded. 6 phoenixes, 6 cherubim, 6 six-winged ones sang together, their voices intertwining in a melody so perfect that Enoch could only weep for joy. Here, there was no darkness, only the peace and assurance that all things, great and small, were held in God's loving hands, upward still. The angels led Enoch higher than human thought, beyond the reach of earthly knowledge. At last, they reached the seventh heaven, a place where words truly fail. A light so great filled this realm that Enoch could scarcely keep his eyes open. Everywhere he looked, he saw fiery troops, archangels of incalculable power, dominions and thrones, creatures with countless eyes, their gaze fixed always on the presence of God. In the midst of this overwhelming radiance, Enoch trembled. The closer he drew to the heart of creation, the more he realized his own smallness, his own utter dependence on the mercy of the one who sat enthroned above all. The two angels, sensing his fear, comforted him with a gentle word. "Take courage. Enoch, you are not here by accident. What must it be like to stand before such majesty, knowing that your every secret is exposed, yet to be told that you are welcomed, cherished, chosen?" Enoch's knees grew weak. His voice faltered. The heavenly host, legions upon legions, stood on 10 great steps, bowing before the Lord, then returning to their places, always singing, never ceasing in worship. And then, as if all creation had held its breath, a new figure approached. The archangel Gabriel, clothed in glory, came to Enoch and lifted him up as one might carry a leaf on the wind. With trembling, Enoch realized that he was being brought before the very throne of God himself, the source of all light, all life, all wisdom. He looked, and what he saw defies imagination. A face like iron glowing in fire, sparks leaping forth, beauty and terror intertwined. Around the throne, troops of seraphim and cherubim circled, their songs weaving through the air like living flame. Gabriel said, "Do not be afraid. Arise, for the Lord himself wishes to speak with you." As Enoch bowed, the voice of the Lord thundered not in anger, but in a depth of love and power that made every other sound seem like a whisper. "Enoch, stand before my face into eternity." At these words, a new peace flooded Enoch's heart. The archangel Michael approached, anointing Enoch with oil brighter than sunlight, clothing him in garments of glory that shone with the promise of a new creation. Transformed, Enoch stood not as a mere man, but as one welcomed among the glorious ones, his eyes opened to mysteries he could scarcely have dreamed. He was then handed the books of wisdom, the very records of heaven and earth, thunder and rain, star and soul. And so, as Enoch began to write, the question was no longer, what will he see? But what will he share with the world? And how will we respond when the secrets of the heavens are laid before us? With each passing moment, Enoch found himself less and less tethered to the world he once knew. The worries of earth weather and harvest, laughter and tears, even the faces of his family seemed to blur at the edges, replaced by a profound awareness of the eternal. He had stepped beyond the boundaries of time and place, into a realm where every detail was both infinitely meaningful and dazzling beyond expression. In the brilliance before the throne, Enoch was invited to see the universe from the Creator's perspective. Imagine holding in your hands not just the secrets of the stars, but the logic behind their movement, the reason behind every sunrise and sunset, the hidden cause for every season's turn. Enoch was given the heavenly records. Pages upon pages, some say 366 books in all, detailing not only the cycles of creation, but the lives and destinies of every human soul. To be entrusted with such knowledge was to feel the weight of worlds. As he wrote, Enoch felt the words pour into him, as if from a river whose source was older than mountains. Each truth carried a responsibility. There were the names of the angels and their ranks, the mysteries of thunder and rain, the path of the winds, and the reasons for the rise and fall of empires. Even the songs sung by every living thing were known and catalogued. Woven into the fabric of reality itself, the Lord, seeing Enoch's awe, spoke to him not as a distant monarch, but as a father revealing his heart. Enoch, beloved, all that you see, all things that are finished, and those yet to be, I reveal to you. Even before the beginning, before there was anything visible, I alone was moving in the invisible. My thoughts became the foundation of all things. These words struck Enoch to his core. To think of a God who existed before all, who conceived the idea of creation in the silence of eternity, and who now invited a mere human to understand, if only for a moment, the logic of his love and order that was the true miracle. It was the sort of revelation that makes you question everything you thought you knew, that invites you to step outside yourself and see the world as shimmering with purpose, alive with meaning. The Lord continued, telling Enoch of invisible worlds and visible ones, of how the heavens were layered one above another, each with its own glory, each with its own secret. He spoke of the angels, not as distant, alien beings, but as servants working joyfully for the flourishing of all creation. Enoch learned that every life, every act of courage or cruelty, rippled outwards in ways no human eye could see, but all were noted and remembered. And then, as the conversation deepened, the Lord brought forth a special messenger, an archangel named Pravil, swifter in wisdom than any other. Pravil carried the books of quick writing, heaven's answer to every longing, every question, every prayer, handing them to Enoch. The Lord instructed, "Record all that you have seen. Write not only the things of heaven and earth, but the story of every soul, each one precious, each one unique." So Enoch wrote, and as he wrote, his heart grew both heavy and joyful. There was sorrow for the pain and rebellion woven into human history. But greater still was the hope he glimpsed, hope that every tear and every act of faithfulness was seen and treasured by the Maker of all. With his transformation complete, Enoch was seated in a place of honor beside Gabriel. He looked around, stunned to find himself among beings of radiant glory, no longer an outsider, but welcomed as a friend, a brother, a son. He was no longer bound by flesh or fear, but clothed in garments that gleamed with the very light of God. Yet Enoch knew, as all who come close to the divine must eventually know, that knowledge is not given to be hoarded. What use is the wisdom of the ages if it dies on the page or in the mind? The Lord's command was clear. Enoch's revelations were not for him alone, but for all generations. They were to be a lamp for those groping in darkness, a comfort for the weary, a warning for the proud, and a promise for the humble. Enoch's mind flashed with the faces of those he loved, his sons, his grandchildren, all those who would one day wonder about their purpose and their place in the grand story. He realized now why he'd been chosen, not for his strength or intellect, but for his willingness to listen, to ask, to trust. In this, Enoch became a pattern for every seeker, an example that even in the midst of mystery, it is faith, humility, and a longing for the truth that opened the doors of heaven. The Lord's final words to Enoch that day ring out like thunder. Even now, I have not revealed these secrets to my angels, nor shared them with the highest of the archangels, but I entrust them to you, Enoch, for it is my joy not only to create, but to share, to invite, to draw near those who hunger for what is real. There was a pause, a silence filled with the music of the spheres, as Enoch sat in awe. Then, with a gesture, the Lord signaled, and the countless angelic hosts bowed, their songs echoing through realms upon realms. Voices joined in a harmony that carried both the sorrow of judgment and the triumph of love. And just as the vision began, so too did it begin to draw to a close. Enoch sensed that his journey was not ending, but transforming. He was being sent back not as he was, but as someone marked forever by what he had seen. But before he departed, one more wonder awaited him, a journey beyond even the highest heaven, into realms where time and space fall away, and only the face of God remains. Enoch would come to know that even as mysteries abound, there is no place so distant, no question so deep, that the love of God cannot reach. He was ready, not because he understood everything, but because he had learned that understanding is not the highest goal. It is trust, surrender, and the willingness to follow wherever the voice of the Lord leads that matter most. Enoch's heart beat strong with the knowledge that he would soon carry back a message for all ages, a message not just of warning, but of hope. Enoch felt the boundaries of self-dissolving, as if the last threads that tethered him to ordinary human experience were slipping quietly away. He was no longer merely a witness, but a participant in the rhythms of heaven, a guest welcomed into the deepest chambers of divine purpose. The hosts of heaven seraphim with their 6 wings, cherubim with eyes covering every surface, great archangels bearing trumpets and scrolls moved in intricate patterns, each motion a form of worship, each song a declaration of the King's endless glory. He saw the 8th heaven, called Muzaloth, home of the seasons and the great constellations, where time itself seemed to swirl in celestial dances. Here the constellations spun in careful circles, the passage of drought and rain, spring and harvest. Mapped in the bright signs above, Enoch realized that all the patterns of the earth, the growing of crops, the coming of storms, the changing of human fortunes were but reflections of this higher order, echoes of a plan so vast it could only be glimpsed from above. Beyond that, the 9th heaven unfolded, known as Kuchavim, the dwelling place of the 12 constellations in their eternal homes. Enoch glimpsed shapes and forms more brilliant than diamonds, wheels within wheels turning in endless cycles, each one singing its own quiet hymn. The wisdom of these realms was so far beyond his reach that Enoch could only stand in awestruck silence, aware that what he saw was but a fraction of the full reality. The music here was almost too pure, a harmony so perfect it brought tears to his eyes. At last, he was brought to the 10th heaven, the highest of all, called Aravoth. Here, words utterly failed him. The light was so fierce, so full, that Enoch felt as though every cell of his being was illuminated from within. This was the dwelling of the Lord himself, the throne from which all of reality radiated outward. Around it stood the greatest of the angels, their forms blazing like suns, yet their faces humble, their songs gentle, as if they themselves were awestruck in the presence of their Maker. And then, the impossible happened. Enoch was invited closer, into the very presence of the Lord. He saw the face of God as a fire burning in precious metal, sparks dancing out in every direction, a vision that was both terrible and beautiful. No artist's hand could capture it. No language could describe it. The presence was overwhelming, yet somehow familiar, like the return of a memory long forgotten. Enoch fell on his face, overcome. He felt exposed, transparent every deed, every thought, every forgotten hope lay open before the gaze of the Almighty. But in that moment of vulnerability, he was not consumed by fear, but filled with a peace deeper than anything he had ever known. The Lord's voice thundered, not in accusation, but in welcome. Enoch, rise, stand before me, not just for a moment, but for eternity. Michael, the archangel, approached and gently helped Enoch to his feet. In the presence of so much light, the garments of glory he had been given shone all the brighter, and Enoch felt the last remnants of earthly weakness fall away. He was not alone. Around him stood beings of impossible wisdom, and yet, the Lord had chosen him, a simple man from a world that would soon be washed by the flood, to see what kings and prophets had only ever dreamed of. Enoch was then shown the Book of Destinies, a record not just of nations or angels, but of every soul that would ever live. He was allowed to glimpse the choices, the sorrows, and the joys, all held together by a thread of mercy that ran through every page. He realized that nothing was forgotten, no kindness wasted, no tear uncounted. God's justice was more perfect than any earthly judge, and his love more vast than the stars. The Lord's voice resounded with instruction and comfort. Enoch was told to write not only what he had seen, but also what he now understood, that creation was always moving toward a greater wholeness, that even the tragedies and rebellions of history would ultimately be used for good. The angels rejoiced at this, their songs rising in a swelling chorus that seemed to make the very fabric of reality vibrate with hope. Enoch was granted the ability to see how every element, water, wind, fire, and earth obeyed the will of their Creator. He learned the patterns of storms, the secrets of healing plants, the cycles that guided the great beasts of the land and the silent fish of the sea. In every detail, he recognized the mark of a careful artist, a craftsman who delighted in both the grand and the small. He also saw the sadness that ran through the heart of the universe, a sorrow for those who had turned away, for angels who had rebelled, and for people who would refuse the offer of grace. Yet, even this pain was not outside the reach of God's compassion. Enoch heard the Lord speak of future redemption, a plan set in motion from before the first dawn, a hope that would one day break even the hardest chains. The longer Enoch remained in the presence of the Lord, the more he longed for others to know this peace. He thought of the world below his sons, his grandchildren, all the generations that would follow, and he ached to bring them the assurance he now felt. He understood now why the heavens had been opened to him, not to create distance, but to invite connection, not to foster pride, but to awaken humility and wonder. He sensed, too, that his time in the highest heaven was drawing to an end. There was still so much he could never understand. But the Lord had revealed enough. He had seen judgment and mercy, order and mystery, and most of all, he had come to know the heart of a God who delights in sharing his glory. As the angels prepared to return Enoch to the world below, the Lord gave him a final blessing, a promise that the story would not end with Enoch, but would echo across the centuries, reaching its fulfillment in a day yet to come. The music of the heavens faded into the distance, but a new song began to rise within Enoch's soul, a song that would carry him back to earth, changed forever. Enoch could feel the warmth of that final blessing lingering within him, even as the brilliance of Erevoth, the highest heaven, began to fade around him. He was returning not as the same man who had left the world below, but as someone forever marked by light, burdened with secrets, and yet uplifted by hope. The angels surrounded him once more, their wings unfurling in silent praise, and together they began the descent through the heavens, the music of each realm trailing behind them like the last notes of a sacred hymn. As he passed through the lower realms, Enoch gazed again on the things he had seen before, the watchers in their sorrow, the hosts of angels singing over the order of creation, the storerooms of snow and dew, the great wheels of the stars and the ever-turning gates of sun and moon. Yet everything looked different now. Transformed by the knowledge he had gained, he understood the threads connecting judgment and mercy, order and chaos, the beauty of paradise and the warning of the places of torment. Each sight seemed to whisper a message that every act in the mortal world is woven into the fabric of eternity, that nothing escapes the watchful gaze of the one who sits enthroned above all. When Enoch finally returned to the threshold of the earth, the world felt impossibly quiet. The air tasted of dew and memory, the dawn just beginning to spill gold across the hills. He found his family waiting faces filled with a longing only partially understood, eyes wide with hope and fear. It's hard to imagine what they saw in Enoch's expression at that moment. Perhaps they glimpsed the shadows of other worlds, the glimmer of knowledge too great for words, a gentleness and gravity that made him seem older and yet somehow more alive than before. Gathering his sons and household, Enoch spoke, his voice carrying an authority that could only come from someone who had stood before the throne of God. He shared with them what he had learned, not only the wonders, but also the responsibilities that knowledge brings. He told them of the beauty of obedience, the peril of pride, the certainty that every secret thought is seen and weighed, and the truth that the path to paradise is open to all who seek righteousness, humility, and compassion. His sons listened, not as children listen to an old story, but as heirs receiving a trust, their hearts burning within them as Enoch described the tree of life, the angelic choirs, and the river that flowed through the garden of the righteous. He warned them with tears in his eyes of the fate that awaited those who turn away, not with the anger of a judge, but with the sorrow of one who has seen what is lost. Yet Enoch's words were not only for his family. He knew the message must be preserved, carried beyond his own years. So he began to write. The books he composed, some say numbering in the hundreds, contained not only visions and prophecies, but practical wisdom, how to live with integrity, how to honor the Creator in the midst of a crooked generation, how to nurture hope even as the world grew dark. It's striking, when you reflect on it, that Enoch's greatest legacy was not the miracles he witnessed or the mysteries he unraveled, but his willingness to share, to teach, to pass on what he had received. He became the bridge between heaven and earth, a voice echoing through the ages, calling all who would listen to rise above the shadows and set their eyes on the things that endure. The years after his return were marked by a new kind of quietness, a peace that ran deeper than mere silence. Enoch was present with his family, his community, but he was also set apart, as if he belonged partly to another world. He walked among the people as one who had seen the beginning and the end, offering counsel, comfort, and at times warning. Some came to him for advice on the affairs of the land, others for healing or prayer, and still others simply to sit in the shade of his wisdom. What set Enoch apart, perhaps more than anything, was his humility. For all he had seen, he claimed no credit for himself. When asked how he could speak with such certainty, he would only point to the grace of the one who called him. When others boasted of their deeds or sought after the secrets of power, Enoch quietly reminded them that the greatest treasures are found in faithfulness and trust. As the years went by, tales of Enoch's journey spread far and wide. Some scoffed at the stories, unable to believe that a mortal could rise so high. Others clung to them as lifelines, reminders that even in a world of violence and confusion, there are still windows into the holy, still moments when heaven bends low to meet the seeking heart. Enoch's writings, though not always understood, continued to circulate, whispered about by sages, treasured by seekers, even as floods and wars threatened to erase them. Through every trial, the central message endured, that God is not far from us, that He delights in revealing Himself to the humble, and that every soul, no matter how lost, can find a way home. And so, the story of Enoch became not only a record of what once was, but a signpost pointing to what could be. His journey through the 10 heavens was less about personal glory and more about opening a door for others, about kindling a hope that would never fully die. No matter how dark the world might become, as time moved forward and the world grew older, the memory of Enoch's journey lingered in the hearts of his descendants. His words, carefully inscribed and lovingly passed down, became both a comfort and a challenge. Each new generation faced their own trials and temptations, but the story of their ancestor, a man who walked with God and was taken into the very heart of heaven, reminded them that faithfulness was never wasted, that the universe was shaped by more than the rise and fall of kings. Enoch continued to live among his people, his presence a quiet reminder of the invisible reality surrounding every moment of human life. He was not obsessed with mysteries for their own sake, nor with the honor that might have come from his visions. Instead, he walked in humility, returning day after day to the simple rhythms of teaching, working, and loving those entrusted to his care. He did not claim to have all the answers, but what he had seen convinced him that seeking the face of God was worth every sacrifice. In the evenings, as the sky faded from gold to indigo and the stars pricked through the darkness, Enoch would sometimes gaze upward, remembering the realms beyond sight. He never tried to recapture the glory of those visions, but he carried their peace within him, a peace that could not be shaken. Even as rumors spread of coming judgment, of a great flood that would wipe away all that was corrupt and cruel. People often came to Enoch for counsel. He listened patiently to their fears and struggles, never rushing their stories, always turning their gaze from themselves back to the one who holds all things together. When asked about the secrets of the heavens, Enoch smiled softly and pointed them back to the wisdom of walking humbly, loving mercy, and doing justice. He understood, as few ever do, that knowing the mysteries of creation is not the same as knowing the heart of the Creator. The day came, as it must for everyone, when Enoch's time on earth drew to a close. But for him, there was no fear, no frantic clinging to life, no regrets left unsaid. He gathered his family one last time, blessing each child and grandchild with the words of hope and warning he had carried since the day the angels called his name. He spoke of the love that undergirds the universe, the justice that cannot be fooled, and the mercy that waits for every returning soul. And then, as the story goes, Enoch simply walked with God and was not, for God took him. There was no tomb, no monument, just the sudden emptiness where he had been, and the quiet certainty that he had passed into the fullness of the glory he had glimpsed so many years before. His family mourned, but their grief was tempered by awe. They knew Enoch's journey was not an ending, but a transformation, a promise that the wall between heaven and earth is thinner than we ever dared believe. Long after Enoch vanished from their sight, his legacy endured. His writings survived the flood, hidden away and rediscovered by those who still searched for meaning when the world seemed dark. Prophets and sages pondered his visions, and his name found its way into the prayers of those who longed for a glimpse of the divine. Generations later, even after empires fell and languages changed, the story of Enoch inspired poets, priests, and simple believers alike. They saw in him not just a hero, but a guide, a friend who had gone ahead, lighting the path for all who would follow. Over time, Enoch's tale became a mirror in which people saw their own lives reflected. His ascent through the heavens echoed the longing within every heart to rise above what is broken and find what is eternal. His warnings about judgment were not meant to crush hope, but to spark repentance and longing for a better way. Most of all, his encounter with God reminded everyone who heard it that the greatest mystery is not found in distant galaxies or hidden realms, but in the presence of the Creator who calls each of us by name. Even the New Testament would later speak of Enoch, holding him up as an example of faith, a man who pleased God and was taken so that he would not see death. Some saw in Enoch a foreshadowing of a greater promise, a whisper that one day, the wall between heaven and earth would fall away completely, and all who trust would walk again with God in peace. So what does Enoch's story mean for us now? Standing at the edge of our own mysteries, carrying our own burdens and questions, maybe it's this: that the journey to know God is never wasted. Even when it feels lonely or confusing, that faith, humility, and love matter more than visions or revelations. That each act of kindness, every moment of courage, every step taken in trust ripples out farther than we can see, woven into the great story of redemption that began before the world and will not end until every tear is wiped away. And maybe, above all, Enoch's life invites us to wonder, what might happen if we too dared to walk closely with God, to listen for His voice, to live as if the unseen world is more real than the one we touch? What might we discover if we believed that heaven still opens, and that the journey upward is still possible for those who seek in faith? The story of Enoch is not just a tale of ancient days, but a call that echoes in every generation. It is the invitation to rise, to hope, and to believe that no matter how dark the world becomes, the light of the Creator still waits, ready to welcome every searching soul home. If this story stirred something in you, share your thoughts below. Was it Enoch's courage, his humility, or the mystery of his journey that spoke to you most? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more explorations into the hidden wonders of the Scriptures. Until next time, may you walk with God step by step, heart to heart into the mysteries He longs for you to discover.